And that's it. Liftoff of the last space shuttle mission. Take a look at that column of smoke over there from the engines. With all that fear about delays, actually I don't think we could have had a better day for the launch.
Hey, so it occurs to me that you guys might be wondering what this space shuttle is actually doing up there. Not many people really understand what these shuttles actually are doing and why it's important that we keep sending them up there with whatever it is we're sending them up there with. So shuttle missions generally fall into two categories. They're either taking something up or they are going to the International Space Station on kind of a, it's almost like commuting. They'll take astronauts up, they'll take supplies up, and they'll bring astronauts down, and they'll bring the results of experiments down, or the materials that are no longer needed for experiments up there, they'll bring those down. This mission is kind of both. It's taking up a lot of new supplies for the International Space Station, huge packs of spare parts and dried food and that sort of stuff that the station is going to need, because the International Space Station's mission is very likely to be extended. So it's going to stay up there longer than planned, and it needs as many supplies as possible, because this being the last shuttle, no more supplies can go up from the United States. Anything more that needs to be sent up there has to be sent on a Russian spacecraft, the Soyuz, which has very little cargo space. Practically none, actually. Soyuz is basically just like a capsule with enough space for, I think it's 3 people, but I could be wrong. And then a big module behind it filled with computers and equipment, and there's no space to put anything. So supplying the International Space Station is going to be a challenge from here on out. So they took up a bunch of supplies and a bunch of spare parts, and they also took up some new equipment that is also going to be attached to the International Space Station. They weren't releasing any separate satellites or anything this time. They had a new sensor package and something to do, an experiment with robotic refueling. So it was basically to demonstrate the technology for refueling satellites in orbit by robot. Previously, when a satellite ran out of fuel, you had 2 options. You just waited for it to fall out of orbit and burn up, Or you sent a shuttle up there with a whole crew to refuel it, which is really expensive and time-consuming, and it's not worth doing it for most satellites. So being able to refuel satellites while they're in orbit would give us the ability to keep them up there for a much longer period of time, and send them up with less fuel when they go up, which would also save some money and some weight in the initial rocket. So this could be a pretty important deal. That's the kind of stuff that the space shuttles do all the time. They take up experiments, they take up new equipment, they take up people, and they bring people back down. I don't think any of the crew from this one are actually going to stay on the space station, though, because this is the last mission. You know, they would have to come back down on the same shuttle, pretty much. There's only room in the craft that are planned to bring the current crew down for the current crew. There isn't room if anybody else were to stay up there. That's my understanding anyway. And I don't know what craft will actually be bringing the current astronauts down. They might be sending up a Soyuz capsule with like one person in it to fly it there, and then bringing it back down with 3, and sending it up again to get the other guys. This is the problem with not having the space shuttle anymore, because there's nothing else that can do the same job. And NASA has actually replaced the space shuttle with, or is going to replace it in about 4 or 5 years, with something called Orion. The Orion ships aren't out there yet. They're scheduled for a first launch in 2015, which probably, you know, the space program, it never hits its targets. Today, actually having a launch on the day that was targeted was unusual. But the problem with Orion is, even when it's here, it's a giant leap backward. I'll show you some more when I go back to the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex tomorrow, because I've got some stuff there about Orion. But Orion's kind of pathetic, actually, compared to the space shuttle. It's basically the old Apollo spacecraft that went to the moon. I mean, it's newer technology, but it's pretty much the same design, with the same cramped quarters, the same lack of space for any cargo, the same, you know, various components can't be reused the way they can with the space shuttle, like the booster engines on the space shuttle can be reused, whereas Orion's going to be sent into space on a big rocket that will fall to Earth and burn up, so that's not only more wasteful, it's also more expensive, at least as I understand it. So we're kind of stuck, in a way, in terms of what we can do in space, until we've got something that really properly replaces the shuttle. And we can talk about why nothing's being built, but mostly it's because NASA's decided to leave it up to private companies to build something like that. And none of the private companies at the moment are capable of making enough money in space exploration to actually carry it out the way that a government agency would. That might change in the next few years, but at least until 2015, there are no manned space flights anymore going up from anywhere in the world except Russia. And even after 2015, the only vessel that we have planned, this Orion program, is not something that can meet the same needs that were met by the shuttle. Okay, everyone. So the ticket I got to the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex for the launch gives me a second day of admission within a week, so I'm going back today, and we'll see what else interesting there is out there, either about this mission or the shuttle, or that's just spacey and cool. Back at Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex the day after the launch. As you can see, not thousands of people, and it's not 2 a.m., so woo! Interesting thing to start off the day with. Space tree. Emma, you'll love this. And it's not for climbing. This tree, apparently, was grown from a seed that actually went to the moon and back. Why they did that, I have no idea, but I think it's pretty cool. Okay guys, figure this one out. I'll give you 5 seconds, or you can pause the video. And here's another one. Once again, 5 seconds. Okay, so I found where all the really cool stuff is. This building's all about future concepts for new space vehicles and technologies that we might need in the 21st century if we actually get our act together and get off the Earth a little bit more often. So, let's take a look. That's a concept for a lunar space exploration vehicle. Something we might use on the moon or Mars, pretty much anywhere else. About the size of a pickup truck, apparently. The fact that it's pressurized is a lot better than what they had on the moon in the 70s. This is kind of cool too. You can just jump into your spacesuit from the inside. And here's something even cooler looking. A six-legged wheeled, I don't know what to call it, but apparently it could be used in the future to go over rocky terrain, because if it gets to something that it can't roll over, it just walks over it. And it's called the Athlete, which is, just so you know, NASA loves acronyms. So the real thing would have 6 of these. And I guess you could put anything you wanted on top of it. Kind of looks like a transformer to me. See, they've been testing them here on Earth in the desert. Although what they would find out there that they have to step over, I have no idea. So, I don't know why this poster's here, but yes, I would so do that. I'm at the observation gangway now, about 3 stories up, and we can see some of the important parts of the shuttle program from here. Over there, do you see that big gray thing that looks like a building on tank treads? That's pretty much what it is. That thing is the 6 million pound platform that moves the shuttle back and forth. The big tall building over there, that's where they roll a shuttle after a successful landing. And they spend 3 months in there just going over the shuttle, kind of taking it apart, making sure everything works, putting it back together. Then they roll this thing in there, and they put the rocket boosters on, like that, vertically. They put the fuel tank on, and then they have these 2 big cranes that winch the space shuttle from its landing position up into a vertical position, and they move it in and they attach it to the fuel tank and the rocket boosters. So that's, if you can imagine, these 2 cranes, they're lifting 150,000 pounds of space shuttle, and they're moving it by distances as small as a millimeter to get it into exactly the right position. And then the whole assembly is not directly mounted on this rolling thing. There's actually in between the launch pad. The launch pad doesn't stay in one place, it's mobile. And so you have this crawler, then the launch pad, and then the whole shuttle assembly on top of it. The whole thing weighs 18 million pounds, and it runs down this rock road here, which is 7 feet deep of rock. Because if you got 18 million pounds rolling down a regular road, it would be destroyed the first time. And that thing moves at 1 mile an hour, and it gets 42 feet to the gallon of diesel, which is an expensive amount of fuel. And it goes over there. You see in the distance, that is launch pad 39A, that big tower there. They hook the shuttle up to that, and for a couple of weeks before the launch, it just sort of sits there with the mobile launch pad underneath and the crawler still underneath that. And then on launch day, of course, if everything's good, the main engines ignite, the boosters ignite, and then they actually blow something up. They've got these explosive bolts that hold the shuttle down to the pad. Those, they don't take the bolts off. They just send a signal and the bolts blow up, which frees the shuttle so that it can take off.